There's nothing quite like a good crossover between two TV shows. Back in the day, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to see Lucille Ball share the screen with Superman, or for Alf to spend an episode obsessing over Gilligan's Island. In modern TV, crossovers are fewer and farther between, given how it's rarer than ever for networks and streaming services to come together rather than compete. Still, the occasional TV crossover is enough to remind us just how magical it is to see two shows, sometimes with entirely different tones, weave together for an episode. Take, for instance, the shocking It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Abbott Elementary crossover, which allowed the characters from both shows to play off each other in new and unexpected ways. Crossovers also typically still happen for franchises like Law and Order, Chicago Fire, and Grey's Anatomy. However, there are plenty of popular shows that deserve a crossover, too. Shrinking and Ted Lasso. Bill Lawrence's feel-good Apple TV shows would make a perfect pair. Bill Lawrence has been behind plenty of successful sitcoms, including 2 current sitcoms on Apple TV that share more than behind-the-scenes talent. Ted Lasso, the Jason Sudeikis-led dramedy following an American coaching an underdog soccer team in London, was meant to end after its 3rd season but is surprisingly returning for a 4th, a prospect that has garnered mixed reactions from fans. Though Ted Lasso season May 4th be Apple TV's biggest test yet, a good way to win over audiences would be to cross it over with Lawrence's other Apple TV show, Shrinking, in which Jason Segel plays a therapist grieving his wife's death. It's not entirely outside the realm of possibility for the Shrinking characters to cross the Atlantic Ocean and see one of Ted Lasso's games. It would be incredible to see Brett Goldstein's Roy Kent interact with Harrison Ford's Paul Rhodes in a grumpy showdown. Only Murders in the Building and Poker Face Natasha Lyonne could lend a hand to the Arconia's amateur podcasters. Peacock's Poker Face was already an underrated crime series before it was sadly cancelled after 2 seasons. However, there's a chance to bring back Natasha Lyonne's Charlie Cale in another popular TV murder mystery, Only Murders in the Building, a Hulu series in which Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez play 3 true crime fanatics who start a podcast covering a series of murders that take place in their luxurious New York apartment building. Only Murders has already become a haven for incredibly talented actors in recurring roles, from Meryl Streep to Paul Rudd, and even Ron Howard. Given how much Only Murders lampoons Hollywood, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for Lyonne to show up not as Charlie Cale but as herself, albeit using the detective skills she learned on Poker Face to help the well-meaning but somewhat messy Arconia trio. Ted and the Orville. Seth MacFarlane is no stranger to letting his shows cross paths. The future of Seth MacFarlane's series Ted on Peacock is up in the air, given how expensive it is to produce. Maybe it'd be easier to secure Ted Season 3 fate if MacFarlane incorporated a crossover episode in the next season of The Orville, his sci-fi series spoofing the likes of Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica. After all, he's previously done crossovers with his animated series Family Guy and American Dad. The only question is, how would the suburbia set Ted cross paths with 25th century space exploration? Well, Ted already plays around with absurdist humor, and The Orville experimented with time travel in its 3rd season. Perhaps the Sci-Fi series could pay homage to Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home by letting its cast get trapped in 1990s Boston, where they somehow need the help of the Bennett family to get home. It'll just be a bit awkward for Lieutenant Malloy to meet Maddie, given they're both played by Scott Grimes. Ponies and the Americans. The latest Cold War-era Russia series could bring back an old favorite. The only thing keeping the characters from Ponies and the Americans crossing paths is a couple of years and a plane ride. Peacock's newest series takes place in 1977 Moscow, while The Americans starts in Washington, D.C. in 1981. However, it's easy to imagine Matthew Rhys and Kerry Russell reprising their roles as KGB agents Philip and Elizabeth Jennings before the events of The Americans via a Ponies cameo. Ponies only improved during its 1st season, showing a lot of promise as a successor to The Americans as a Cold War set drama. If anything, the timeline of The Americans leaves a lot of room for Philip and Elizabeth between the early 70s and 80s, meaning it's entirely possible they somehow cross paths with housewives-turned-spies Bea and Twyla. Daredevil, Born Again and MCU Spider-Man. They've met on the big screen, now let's reunite them on the small screen. Technically, the Daredevil series has already crossed over with the MCU numerous times, with Spider-Man, No Way Home featuring Matt Murdock as Peter Parker's lawyer, and Kingpin appearing in Hawkeye. The crossovers are set to continue with John Bernthal's Frank Castle in the MCU's most ambitious upcoming crossover, Spider-Man, Brand New Day.